Hiroshi Tanahashi has been our New Japan Pro Wrestling president for the last 6 months. Today, June 4th, 2024, Hiroshi Tanahashi addresses media alongside Representative Director Hitoshi Matsumoto and owner Kadani. This press conference that they had is to reflect upon the 6 months and then to have a 10-step roadmap planned for the future growth in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Oh boy, you know we're talking about the 10 steps. So settle in, get ready, because we're going to talk about the 10 steps. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Squared Circle Podcast with your host, Marie Shadows. And on this episode of the Squared Circle Podcast, we're going to be talking about the press conference that happened today where Hiroshi Tanahashi mapped out the 10-step road that they have planned for New Japan Pro Wrestling for their growth. Now, just to preface this and preface this, I guess, I did read through the article. I did read through the comments, and I did see the discussion over on Twitter, which has been tamed for the whole day. But we're really going to dive deep into this. I'm going to give my perspective. I'm going to give my opinions. And if that's something that you love, please make sure to follow the Square Circle Podcast, not only on youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast, but also on Spotify. Search Squared Circle Podcast and you will see it pop up. And when you do, make sure to hit that follow button on Spotify. That helps me out greatly. Even hitting that follow button right here on youtube.com/Square Circle Podcast also helps me as well. In addition to all of that, I do ask everyone who listens that not only do you share it out to your friends and anyone else, and I always ask that you check the description box below for a link to all of my links to support me further, whether that is on the wrestling newsletter, Wrestling Roots Hub, which you can sign up at marieshadows.substack.com. I'm still waiting for you guys to join me there as well and have wrestling conversations, and then also to just support by getting merch and all of that. But there is one particular link that I want to talk about, which is called Meal Train. This is not an affiliate kind of link. I don't get money for this, but Meal Train helps people that had a very unexpected life situation happen. And I'm talking about myself. I had a very unexpected life situation happen. So I am in need of an emergency food fund, and I set up a meal train. I am not trying to guilt anybody. I am not trying to force anybody. It is up to you whether or not you want to give a small donation so I could have some type of grocery, some type of food for the next week and a half or so. But the link to that meal train to help me out will be down below. I do not put any of my podcasting content behind a paywall, and you may call me a fool for that, but I really do enjoy genuine conversation. I really do enjoy anybody that has a good, bad, and ugly comment to put on the videos, to send in DMs, because we're creating conversation. So none of my content is put behind a paywall. So everything is for free. So if you enjoy getting free stuff and you can also lend a hand, the Meal Train link will be down in the description below just to help me out. It is something personal that happened, and the story of what happened would be on the donation page. I do not want to distract from this podcast episode because we will be talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling, but I wanted to put it out there for you guys to know. And if you want to help me out, if not, sharing this podcast will do a lot more great, rather than a lot more good, it'll do a lot more great. And I will be forever thankful and grateful to anyone that ever decides to ever help me out, because you enjoyed a piece of my content. You enjoyed a piece of my opinion. Even if you do not agree, that's totally fine. I say that you do not have to agree with me at all, and that is totally okay. But you can at least respect that I can bring a different opinion and perspective to the table that nobody else has. And that's what I love. That's what I want to foster. I want to foster good environments where we can talk about professional wrestling and not get toxic and not get really too mouthy and really too disrespectful, because then you lose the point of what it means to share knowledge, what it means to find common ground, what it means to make friends. So I appreciate anyone taking a look at the link. I appreciate anyone helping me out. I really do appreciate it. Life sometimes throws you a fucking curveball, and I feel like I'm at the bottom of the bottom trying to claw my way out until things get resolved. And it is very stressful, and I do not want to lose hope at all, because I have you guys to thank for listening to these episodes. Now, with that being said, I would like, with everyone's permission, you can send me a message, or you could just, type it in a comment. But I would like to react to your comments and give more explanation if I can. Even though YouTube allows me to write a paragraph or an essay in response to your reply to the YouTube video, I would still like to react to your comments. So let me know if that's okay. If you're over on the Spotify platform, just please fill out the Q&A that I will have up, or the poll, whichever one I put it in, because I would like to have your consent before I react to a comment. All right, now let's jump into this article about Tanahashi telling us the 10th step for the future growth of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Here is number 1, talent discovery and development. Hiroshi Tanahashi says, with more chances to shine in the ring, young talent will be able to draw in more of the fan base. In the near future, you will see more chances afforded young talent to wrestle in prominent spots, and a greater effort focused on discovering and developing new talent in the bid to create brand new stars. Now, the follow-up question is, might we see new young talent in the G1 Climax? Tanahashi responds with, I want to create chances for these talents, but those wrestlers have to make the most of those chances and earn those spots to answer the fan expectation. I made my G1 debut 3 years into my career, and I remember feeling the weight and pressure of being in that environment and the voices that said it was damaging the brand. Still, if there are people that can gut out that and show they belong, we also have a lot of new wrestlers coming up, and I want to focus heavily on wrestlers in their 20s, early 20s especially. Okada was a champion at 23, so I want the best people in their early 20s in Japan, as well as America and the rest of Asia. Okay, let's break this down, because there's not a lot in here about talent and all of that, because there should be some type of standard you're looking for, because the dojo is very strenuous. And if these wrestlers are in their early 20s, are they going to go through the dojo system? Or are they already okay talent that can start on the main roster as everyone else in New Japan Pro Wrestling? And by the way, when I say main roster, I mean like the main group of guys in Japan that do not go to the dojo system for any reason. So I'm talking about the ones that have already proven themselves. But guys like Clark Connors and Gabriel Kidd and Alex Coughlin and Carl Fredericks, all those guys are still in their 20s, and they all went through the dojo system, and then now they are bona fide stars. So are we going to make exceptions? Are we not going to make exceptions? And why would you want to put the championship title on a very young wrestler that has yet to really understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, and if they are moving tickets? It's 2024. It's not the time when Okada was becoming champion at 23. That might have been the right choice at that time, but putting a championship title on someone in their early 20s, like a 23-year-old, sometimes it's not always the best option. And the only thing to compare this to, which I really don't like doing a lot of comparing and contrasting between wrestling companies, but WWE is a great example of this. When they put the belt on Randy Orton, did Randy know what to do with it? Not exactly. Did Batista know what to do with it when they put it on him? or even when they put it on Sheamus and when they put it on Drew McIntyre early in their careers, they really didn't know what to do with them. And this is where it gets a little confusing of, do you listen to the Japanese audience who are making the effort to go to every single event and pay their money in order to watch the events? Or are you going to listen to the American audience, where the American audience will flip-flop on the guy that they want versus the guy they don't want, and then cry about the guy that they do want, and it's going to be a big giant headache. So are we going to listen to a little bit of both, or are we just going to listen to it one side? Now, I like the fact that the new young talent need to earn a spot in the G1 Climax. I really do believe that the G1 Climax is so historical that you need an entry spot for that. However, I am tired of seeing the older wrestlers be in the G1 Climax. The older wrestlers can give us fantastic matches. Not saying they can't, but I really do look forward to having young talent, putting them through the ringer and see who can survive. And sometimes you do need the older talent to be there to help guide the younger talent and really shape them, mold them into stars later on. So point number one is not bad. It's just there could have been more questions. There could have been a little bit more explanations, because I really don't mind having wrestlers in their 20s, not really early 20s, but in their 20s going into 30s being in New Japan Pro Wrestling and making a name for themselves and mapping out what they really want to do. So point number one is not that bad. Point number two is elevating the value of title belts. Was I not just talking about this in my New Japan Pro Wrestling Unpacked video, which you guys could go see in the catalog? The response goes as follows. Taking into account the opinions of wrestlers and fans, we want to clarify the roles and concepts of each championship belt and raise the status of our championships. This will see various forms, but firstly, the New Japan Strong Championships will be restored to their original roles of being defended only on American events. I'm going to stop right there, because I might have to make a YouTube short about this, and I might have to also put it on Twitter and tag Tanahashi and Kadani and be like, hey, if you want the New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Championships to be restored to their original roles of being defended only on American events, does that mean New Japan Strong is coming back? And if New Japan Pro Wrestling is bringing back NJPW Strong, can Fred Rosser and or Rocky Romero run that brand? I need either one of them to run that brand. Fred Rosser is the most loyal wrestler in this world of professional wrestling. He is so loyal to New Japan Pro Wrestling, and he was the main star of New Japan Strong. He carried that. So I would like to see New Japan Strong come back, be its own thing, because New Japan Strong was helping the New Japan brand over in Japan, and that crossover of the American audience with the Japanese audience and coming together and everyone hanging out in Cali, because they haven't like really moved across the country to host in any other place other than like Cali and Chicago. But that's neither here nor there. Having New Japan Strong helped out New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I hope that they bring back New Japan Strong. And that's what I was saying also in my New Japan Pro Wrestling Unpacked podcast. So the follow-up question to that is, can you clarify exactly what might be involved here? This is Tanahashi's answer. Well, first of all, we want to make the Strong titles American exclusive. Additionally, there have been a lot of new titles of late, and it's important, I think, for wrestlers to understand what championships they want to aim toward, and for fans to understand that as well. Each title can have a role in a different event, but we want the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship to consistently be the peak and have those roles take place after that. Now, here's my commentary on that. I do agree that the Strong titles should be American exclusive. However, you did have Kenta win the Strong titles at one point. But, that's just a little tidbit. But either way, I do not mind American wrestlers holding that strong championship title and even probably the tag team titles. However, you need to sign exclusive contracts to have an American roster represent NJPW Strong and NJPW Strong championship titles. You cannot do this revolving door thing that you have with Jon Moxley at the moment, who's on a handshake and a hot dog kind of deal. You can't do that. You need exclusive wrestlers, because when you have exclusive wrestlers and exclusivity for your brand, it raises your stock, and wrestling fans will not feel confused. Wrestling fans will not feel frustrated of being like, who's this guy? Who's that guy? Who's that person? Why is that championship title there? If you have something exclusive and you tell something great on a consistent basis, you won't have as much confusion. That's why there needs to be exclusivity if you're going to go down this route, Tanahashi. The other thing I want to comment before I move on to the next part of this is that each title does have different roles. Again, I talked about the championship titles in the NJPW Unpacked podcast. I love the idea of each title having different roles, so that way a wrestler can aim towards it, but it just seems like it gets lost in the shuffle. It seems like it gets lost in conversation. There is no way about it. Like, it starts off strong, meaning the championship titles and the stories and the competitors, and then it dies out because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to book it. They don't know how to continue the stories because they have a lot of other moving parts that are stopping the championships from actually being championships. What do I mean by that? Let's take a look at the Never Openweight Championship titles, meaning the single belt and also the trios belt. And the trios belt, I didn't know was still around. I was like, who has them? And then on Twitter, I see maybe Tsuji Hiromu and I think Bushi wants to go after the trios title, the Never Openweight trios title. And I'm like, wow, okay. I didn't know that we still had champions for that, because I thought they were vacated because Okada's no longer with the company and he was a former champion alongside Tanahashi and Ishii. However, Ishii right now is going after the NJPW World title to have a 15-minute match against Jeff Cobb at Dominion. And yeah, so the championship titles have lost their roles along the way. So I want to see the championship titles get their original roles back, have stories where wrestlers can go after these titles and it means the world to them. And I really do want the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title to consistently be the peak, the top of the mountain. But because you guys gave it to Jon Moxley, who's not even signed to New Japan Pro Wrestling, he said himself in an interview that he is working on a handshake deal. In professional wrestling, we call that a hot dog and a handshake, because that means that you are a freelancer. That is what a lot of the indie guys are. They are freelancers. They can go from company to company to company to company. And it doesn't really matter. If they had a better opportunity at a different indie company, but they were booked on the same day of their previous indie company, they'll take the better option because you didn't sign them, because you didn't want them exclusive, so they could go wherever they want to go. Even if a wrestler gives their word, their loyalty, that doesn't mean shit when they're confronted with, hey, we'll give you better opportunities, we'll give you more money, we'll sign you. So because Jon Moxley has that kind of a agreement with New Japan Pro Wrestling and is the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, not my champion, you guys have muddied the legacy of this belt. And if Evil cannot take this belt off of Jon Moxley when come June 9th at Dominion in Osaka, and if Evil cannot get the job done and there is another wrestler lined up to try to take that belt, that wrestler who eventually dethrones Jon Moxley will not get a rub, will not matter, and it would be for nothing. So you might have to create a new IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title at this point, because Jon Moxley does not give it legitimacy. Jon Moxley does not care about it. Jon Moxley has it as a prop. AEW is using New Japan Pro Wrestling and the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title as a prop. And I say that we are watching this in real time. We are watching the decline of it in real time. There is more to being a champion than having match after match after match after match after match. You can have matches. That is great. But matches does not make a belt legitimate. There is a lot of things that go on in making a legitimate champion. That is, you should be able to talk in the mic. You should be able to command the crowd. You should be able to connect with the crowd, get emotion into the crowd. And then you could also do media interviews, especially over in Japan. So that way there could be a better core strength between American audiences, Japanese audiences, and you have more money in the middle of the table. But because Jon Moxley has spent so much time out here doing insignificant matches with insignificant stipulations, want to be this fighting champion where nobody in AEW, meaning the fans really don't care about New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I don't know why Jon Moxley is putting so much time in that, where he should be showing up over in Japan and telling the Japanese fans, even in English, because they're going to translate it, telling the Japanese fans, I am your champion. I promise to do this. And anything else that can get the Japanese fans to be like, okay, cool, we'll follow you, and then, we'll boo whoever's against you, but there's no connection at the moment. And he could say 1,000,000 times over that he loves New Japan Pro Wrestling and that he bleeds New Japan Pro Wrestling, blood, sweat, and tears, crawling, the same freaking lines he uses in WWE. He uses it in every single promo. He could say that 1,000,000 times, but if you are not showing it, if you are not parading that belt around like you fucking mean it, then you are not a champion. You're just someone holding a prop, cosplaying as a wrestler, and hasn't really improved or understand your role as a champion. This is what myself and other people have a problem with when it comes to New Japan Pro Wrestling being in a partnership with AEW, and nobody in AEW looks like a star and wants to carry themselves as a star. There is a reason why I said in the second last podcast episode, where is the one-sided partnership conversation, that there is a reason why WWE took their WWE Championship title off of Jon Moxley so quick. There's a reason why. And I think that New Japan Pro Wrestling should make Evil champion, so that way we can start an in-team turmoil of having Ren Narita possibly trying to take the belt away from Evil, because that will get people more interested in House of Torture. Right now, Jon Moxley is not doing anything of interest to help New Japan Pro Wrestling grow, and this is why it is a one-sided partnership. Over on Twitter, people like to be combative and hear their own narrative. And I really don't like that, especially when you can't see the bigger picture of what's going on. And again, we are all watching this in real time. When you create a partnership with a company, with your buddy, with anybody, when you create a partnership that includes business and opportunity, everyone needs to be at the table to discuss possible plans for whatever it is that you might be planning. It takes everyone to be involved in the process. It is not a one-sided thing. It is not, whatever happens in Japan is on Gedo. It may not be. It may be Gedo and Jado and Dick Togo and a bunch of other people. And then any decisions that happen over here in America, it's solely Tony Khan. But there has to be an open communication to have plans come together, things happen. And the only reason why I'm mentioning this when I should be continuing on with the points is because it is not as simple as people make it seem on Twitter, and when they talk, when they really don't know anything else, when they don't look beyond the surface and think that maybe there's more at play here than just surface level and what dirt sheets want you to believe and what you currently see. Again, we're watching this whole entire thing happen in real time. We did the same thing over with TNA. We saw that partnership in real time, and TNA learned very quick that AEW was not going to have TNA get a leg up or any kind of thing. It was just AEW, AEW, AEW. And this is why I'm saying that New Japan Pro Wrestling needs to be careful. Okay, we're still on point number 2. Kadani follows up and says, when New Japan Pro Wrestling was really booming in popularity in 2017, 2018, 2019, we had 7 championships. Right now, there are 13. Let me cut in for a second. That's exactly what I said on my last podcast episode, NJPW Unpacked. Kadani continues, even hardcore fans might not know who all our champions are. That includes me. That wasn't part of his quote, by the way. That was me. The more titles we have, he says, as well, it's felt that even though wrestlers should have more choice in terms of titles to wrestle for, they're more likely to be only tied to one title without much movement. And this is a very good point. I'm going to cut into this and say that this is a very good point, because when you have too many options, more stories get lost in the mix, and then championship titles have to take a back seat, or championship titles and stories end up just flopping and you're like, what the fuck happened? So yes, the more titles, the more stress it is. And even the less titles, the more stress it is too. You have to find a good balance of championship titles and what really can create really good stories, because you really don't need that many championship titles to create really good stories. Let's look at WWE for a second. We had the Intercontinental Championship title. When Gunther had it before he was dethroned, there was a lot of stories surrounding that. And we have really good, interesting story that's happening. Surrounding the World Heavyweight Championship title, we have Drew McIntyre, who's good on the mic, who's having fans really invested into the storyline, even though CM Punk is still recovering. And then we have the Bloodline storyline that just increased in popularity and story-wise, and just having a really good time with these stories and these belts. And we focus around certain types of belts, not every single belt, but then again, it goes back to, if you have more belts, it might end up being kind of too much. If you have less, it might be just way too less, where you might need more. So there has to be a balance. So Kadani continues to go on and say, this process may take time, perhaps over the next year to 18 months. That's totally fine. Work with it. But the important thing is to have the fans understand simply what each title is for and why they matter, and that will be the goal and key to elevating that status. Now, the follow-up question is, there is a double NJPW Strong and IWGP Tag Team Championship match at Dominion. Will those titles be defended separately going forward in that case? I would like to quickly mention before I read Kadani's response that this often happens in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where they combine 2 different titles. Not really combine, but like you are the champion of 2 different championship titles. And they do this when they don't have a clear-cut story, where they don't have a clear-cut roadmap of what to do with them individually. And New Japan Pro Wrestling needs to be focusing on their tag team division, on their Best of the Super Junior division, and even their singles division. But it does feel like there is so many guys, and you could have but so many when they're on the tour, and they get maybe like a 3 to 4 hour time limit to be in the buildings to create their weekly shows over in Japan, that sometimes stuff just get lost. But I really do not like the fact that sometimes they rely on having somebody have 2 different sets of championship titles and become double champions of that. It just doesn't really work out well. It's not really needed unless it's a special situation. So here is Kadani's response. As I mentioned, this is a big project, and some of those details will take time to iron out. The case with strong titles might become one where you have the rarest exception, like a Wrestle Kingdom, where the titles are in Japan, but with the rest of the time on US shows exclusively, and there are New Japan events every month in the US right now. That's meant that feuds over US titles have carried themselves over into Japan as well, making things a bit vague. So the goal is to bring the strong championships more in line with what they were originally intended to be. Let's move on to point 3, reducing/eliminating outside interference. When I saw that for point 3, I was like, they have listened to the wrong kind of fans when it comes to House of Torture interfering. I have explained on this podcast the reason why they do it and the significance of why they do it. However, I do understand that way too much outside interference from House of Torture can get annoying, can get on people's nerves. And so I get that. But however, Americans make everything so dramatic and so exaggerated and just whatever else you want to say that Tanahashi really took this into consideration. But keep in mind that when I read this, it's all in kayfabe. Interference has been something that has stood out in recent months. And from here, I will take a much stricter stance. If I need to be physically involved in that regard, I will be. The follow-up question: how exactly will run-ins be limited? Tanahashi responds with, we haven't decided on concrete penalties yet, but there are important matches coming up in Osaka-jo Hall. I might be at ringside myself, and either way, fans will notice the difference by Dominion. Another follow-up question: and that's something that will continue to be in place in future events? Tanahashi says, it's the one issue that fans have expressed their displeasure with most about NJPW recently. As president, I want to take direct charge on that. Well, Tanahashi, you're listening to the wrong kind of fans. The follow-up question is, there are lots of voices that say House of Torture matches in particular are affected in quality. Is this point in relation to them specifically? Tanahashi says, right. There have been a lot of comments on social media to the company and me specifically. So as a representative of the company, I want to make sure something is done. And then the follow-up question is, so in a broader sense, is this about restricting the actions of heels within New Japan Pro Wrestling? This is where I think they fucked up on the interview to ask this kind of question, but I get why they asked it. Tanahashi then goes on to say, well, wrestling and other sports have a very different approach when it comes to cheating. But if you're cheating, even in a minor way, bending the rules or what have you, it's to turn things in your favor. I think there's a line, even though it's all bending or breaking the rules, there's a line between that and cheating just to cheat. Cheating just to take away from the match at hand. That's a distinction I think we have to make. To put it simply, House of Torture are out of line. Follow-up question. It's a very difficult point to think about when you consider breaking on a ref's 5 count or things like that. There's an extent to where it's all part of pro wrestling. Let's say a wrestler sprays mist. That's illegal, but fans like to see it. Isn't it difficult to draw that line? Tanahashi's response: there's a broad approach to pro wrestling and a loose approach to the rules. So you're right. There's a lot to where the fans have discretion of what they allow and what they don't. With House of Torture specifically, there has been a wave of voices from fans, and that's something we'll draw a firmer line on. Follow-up question. This is why this is a kayfabe kind of answer Q&A for point 3. Does that not fall to the referee? Should there not be a second sub-referee? Or Tanahashi responds with, sounds like a good idea. Shall we do that? And then proceeds to laugh. Even Kadani has a response to this, and he says, some interference, coming to the assistance of partners or teammates, some of that is part of wrestling. It's a unique thing that only professional wrestling has. Let's say someone's rounding third base and heading home in baseball, and a member from the other team sprints out the dugout and tackles the guy. They be barred from that sport. It's only something you see in wrestling. But in society today, there's a lot of challenges to people's lives. We have higher taxes, inflation affecting cost of living, but salaries aren't rising in response. People have a lot of stress in their daily life, and it doesn't seem right to add to that stress in wrestling as well when it should be a release. There is a place for those actions, and in my opinion, that isn't in the main event. Maybe sometimes circumstances dictate that, but to the best of our abilities, I think that's something that can be addressed when making matchups. Right now, it's best for people to have an emotional release and leave the building feeling good about things and themselves. You can have interference in a match and still have the building leaving to feel good and just have a really wholesome time. Even if House of Torture is doing their normal shenanigans. It's just that wrestling fans are too sensitive nowadays and they want to complain and complain and complain and complain and have no real good reason why they complain about House of Torture. And yes, again, I am defending House of Torture because I already explained why they do the shenanigans. But I will empathize and sympathize with you guys about the fact that it does get annoying from time to time. It does. But that does not mean that you have to limit the way that they do the shenanigans just because it's annoying. You have to push it in a different direction. You have to talk to them. You have to have a production meeting with them and be like, hey, tone it down a little bit and you make it make sense for why you're doing the shenanigans. Because I do get it, going out there every single time and do shenanigans and beat up this person, have the ref bump, do all the classic House of Torture stuff, it does get annoying. But no one is there to give them direction. And that's what it is. This is why I say that Tanahashi is listening to the wrong kind of fans that are complaining about House of Torture, rather than giving Tanahashi some type of perspective of like, hey, it's annoying because it is very constant. And if it is very constant and having a frequency that is way above normal, people are going to be put off to it. But if it's every now and then, if it's a very smart shenanigan type of interference, then that should work. But again, wrestling fans are sensitive. And to use that society is in higher taxes, inflation, but salaries aren't rising and people have a lot of stress and you don't want to put any more stress on them, then why buy a ticket to a wrestling event? When you buy a ticket to a wrestling event, you're getting a show. It's no different if you were to buy a ticket to a Broadway play. And in a Broadway play, they may have certain instances where there could be shenanigans, but that's part of the script. That's part of the story. That's part of what the actors are doing. So to try and lessen that because fans just want to complain, you're taking away from what House of Torture is. It's House of Torture. They are there to torture the wrestlers and the referee and do as they please. However, the one thing that I will add to this is that they have to make the wrestlers smarter. They have to make the referees smarter. If the referees and the wrestlers, the opponents towards House of Torture, if they are smart enough to either counter what House of Torture is giving us in these shenanigans, the matches will be better. The response will be better. But we do not get that all the time. What we get all the time is Evil and House of Torture doing these shenanigans where it seems like their opponent is not that smart. The referee is not that smart. They let anything go and they get taken advantage of, and the opponent and the referee look weak, even though the opponent is probably a babyface. But they really take the idea of babyface and heel to the extreme where Evil is the heel and he does what he wants and the babyface is none the wiser. So I think that if the babyface that they're facing in the future and the referee that's there, if they are wiser to what House of Torture does, and House of Torture does this very so often, rather than frequently, there will be a change in wrestling fans. Point number 4, increasing the prominence and status of NJPW Hontai. Before I read this whole entire thing, I'm just going to summarize it because I really don't want to read this whole entire thing. But in the NJPW Unpacked podcast, I was explaining about factions, and I was saying that Hontai needs to disband because it doesn't make any sense to have them anymore. However, Tanahashi wants it to be different. Tanahashi wants Hontai to be a consistent force that is the heart of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And it wants it to have that sportsmanship and honor, and he wants the young wrestlers to join Hontai so they have a home. And this is probably after they come from Excursion. Now, Hontai is basically the third generation of New Japan Pro wrestlers that occupy it. And at that time, Hantai was needed. That group was needed. In 2024, it is not needed. Any young lion that comes back from excursion, from graduation, can start their own team, and that would be a better idea for what character they want to pursue. Being in Hantai, you're going to have the older generation trying to tell the younger generation what they should be, how they should act, and what kind of wrestler they should be when it goes against what they want. I just honestly don't think we need Hantai. That's basically what number 4 is. Number 5, strengthening ties with Stardom. This was an interesting one because Tanahashi says, we announced before that Stardom will become a fully owned subsidiary of New Japan Pro Wrestling as of the end of June. And this is because Bushiroad bought Stardom. So finally, the IWGP Women's Championship title that's over in Stardom finally gets to be used. And all the fans that were complaining about, where is New Japan Pro Wrestling's women's division? Well, there you fucking go. Stardom will become their women's division, but do not expect any kind of woman versus man matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and do not expect much mixed tag. However, the historic crossover of Stardom x New Japan Pro Wrestling had a very positive review. And you guys could go read about my positive review about that over at marieshadows.substack.com. And even when they were doing it, they were kind of nervous because they don't really do mixed tag matches where you have a female from Stardom and a male from New Japan Pro Wrestling versus a female from Stardom and a male from New Japan Pro Wrestling. They really don't do mixed tag matches. Japan has an ideology of, again, dividing the sexes. If you're a woman, you'll be in Stardom. If you're a man, you'll be in New Japan Pro Wrestling. They don't really mingle it together. However, like I said, the Stardom x New Japan Pro Wrestling pay-per-view was really well done and put together and had a very positive review. And I don't know if having Stardom with New Japan Pro Wrestling is going to be beneficial, only because my question will be, will Stardom travel with New Japan Pro Wrestling on these tours? And will they be given enough time to have matches on the card as well as the men? So I don't know what's going to be happening. We'll find out in June and we will talk about it. But hopefully there will be another crossover this year. Tanahashi does say there will also be a crossover event to come later this year with more details to be announced. And I can't wait for that. Point number 6, strengthening ties with AEW. Point number 6 is delusional. Delusion across the board. The question is, how do you feel the AEW relationship will develop? This is Kadani's response. We have a very positive relationship with AEW right now, and there is room for it to evolve further. Don't lie. There are things we can't talk about just yet. I wonder why. But I think it's something that can involve other departments within Bushiroad as well. I do not think that's a good idea because AEW still has not gotten their shit together when it comes to departments. I still feel like most of the people in the departments wear multiple hats because, again, AEW hasn't gotten their shit together. Kadani goes on further to say, I think that this relationship has settled into something that's a lot more stable in the long run. And a lot of that comes from Tony Khan having a deep fandom and appreciation for New Japan Pro Wrestling. He has a lot of passion for 90s guys like Hase and the Steiners. He's a fan, and both he and his father have an incredible business acumen. I am going to stop right there and say that if Tony Khan has a passion for the 90s, then he is not passionate about the future of New Japan Pro Wrestling. And he is not passionate about the present of New Japan Pro Wrestling. If all he wants to talk about are the Steiners and Hase and any other 90s guys that went to New Japan Pro Wrestling during that time, then he does not understand what the future may look like. You celebrate the past of professional wrestling, but when you move forward with the years and with the times, you have to be excited for the future and for the present. Tony Khan comes off as if like he's just saying he's passionate because that's what people would gravitate towards too. But again, if you are just passionate about the 90s and you're not talking about what New Japan Pro Wrestling is currently doing, then that's cause for alarm. Now, I'm going to continue because Kadani says, Tony Khan's father started out making Toyota bumpers and grew his business eightfold in a 10-year span. And the Khans have had all this success, not just in wrestling, but American football and the Premier League. With that acronym and their affinity for Japan, there's a lot that can be done in the future. And I don't think New Japan Pro Wrestling could ask for a better partner right now. What are you on? This is such a delusional statement. Toyota bumpers does not have anything to do with wrestling. Tony Khan's father has nothing to do with wrestling. He just gave Tony Khan his money, his inheritance money, and Tony Khan decided to do a wrestling company because he'd been wanting to do it, but he never paid his dues in the wrestling business in order to be credible. He had to align himself with the elite, and he had Cody Rhodes there to be legit, but Cody Rhodes is in WWE. Tony Khan pushed him out. AEW pushed him out. And you're going to praise the fact that they were successful not just in wrestling, but American football and Premier League? When was the last time that their American football team, the Jaguars, won a ring? And when was the last time that their soccer team won a cup? Like, anyone in WWE is credible to be your partner right now, New Japan Pro Wrestling. Have you not been seeing what's happening with TNA and NXT, the crossover that everyone is talking about? That's the kind of buzz that New Japan Pro Wrestling needs. Not the buzz between New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW. AEW has so much bad baggage that it's going to look bad as New Japan continues their partnership. And then anybody in MOW. Court Bauer is a former WWE employee, and he is legit. MOW is legit, and they will be a better partner to partner up with than AEW. There is nothing legit about Tony Khan having AEW. He just has money put behind it and wrestlers that he has paid for and let run the asylum. And the turnout fluctuates now. Kadani goes on to say, having said that, there is the perception that New Japan Pro Wrestling is treated as a sub-brand or is looked down upon by AEW. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We are watching it in real time, Kadani. AEW used the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title as a prop on a AEW pay-per-view to have Konosuke versus Jon Moxley. And they did it for pay-per-view buys because none of their wrestlers can tell a really captivating story that can sell pay-per-view buys. So that is how this perception of New Japan Pro Wrestling is being treated as a sub-brand or is looked down upon by AEW. That's how it's happening because they're using it as a prop. If anything, you can send Konosuke over to Japan. Konosuke is from DDT. There's another partnership that you guys can start doing and really utilizing, but really hasn't been done yet. And so you can send Konosuke over there to create interesting stories around your own championship title. To have that championship title defended on another platform like AEW just doesn't do anything because the fans don't care. Some of that perception of New Japan Pro Wrestling being behind comes from the economics at the moment. No, that's probably like 50% right. The other 50% is that Japan is historically known for being behind the times, whether it is economic or not economic. I understand that economics, everybody wants to have a degree in economics and probably tell you the money situation over at New Japan Pro Wrestling. But guess what? I put out a tweet because I randomly checked the stocks. And when I put out the tweet not too long ago, the yen was up by 0.27%. So money fluctuates. Economics fluctuates. That cannot be used as an excuse of, oh, this perception is because of economics. No, do not use that as a crutch. Kadani goes on to say, but the truth of the matter is AEW's strengths, where are they? Where are AEW's strengths? They had strength when they had CM Punk and they had MJF have their storyline. That was one of the big storylines that was AEW's strength. Cody Rhodes being there and feuding with MJF was a strength. What else is their strengths? Kadani continues. And New Japan's strengths are different. They are different. They are, but I still don't know what AEW's strengths are. From development of talent from scratch, which New Japan Pro Wrestling does, to a historical and traditional perspective, there's a lot New Japan Pro Wrestling can offer that AEW cannot, which is true. That is why I fight so hard about New Japan Pro Wrestling, because New Japan Pro Wrestling is so different and AEW is not helping. Kadani goes on to say, so there's a lot that we can do together, and while much of it isn't something we can discuss right now, there's a lot we would do. But the idea that New Japan Pro Wrestling is the inferior partner is not correct. We're watching it in real time. We are absolutely only on an even footing, and that's something we'll prove in the near future. Well, on this podcast, I will say, Kadani, Tanahashi, New Japan Pro Wrestling, I love you guys so much. I love New Japan Pro Wrestling. I hope in the near future that you do prove me wrong. And if you prove me wrong, I will admit it, because that's a way of growing. I will admit in the near future, if this partnership works out super, super well, I will admit it. But in this very moment, we are watching everything in real time. Like I said, they were using the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title as a prop on a pay-per-view to increase pay-per-view buys, to try to get the New Japan audience to buy the pay-per-view, when AEW should be relying on homegrown talent, when AEW should be relying on storytelling and merch movers and wrestlers and people that can put a show together, and for both audiences to want to come together and spend their money a lot more. There was no reason for that championship title to be a prop on a pay-per-view show when Jon Moxley should be over in Japan to strengthen Japanese fans, American fans, go on any kind of TV show, do any kind of wrestling interviews, and talk up the importance of having a New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW partnership for the betterment of both companies, so you guys can make money. But there's a lot of money being left on the table, and this is just pure fucking delusion. And again, if anyone is listening to this and you do not agree with me, that is totally okay. It's okay you don't agree with me. I look at things different, and you should too. We should not all be in a bubble together and look at the same kind of things. And agree to agree, because that seems to be trendy nowadays. Again, it's okay if you don't agree with me. Point number 7, improving the live fan experience. Do you know how you improve the live fan experience? It is by having your world champion there every single tour and every single thing until he drops that belt. That is how you improve, well, one way you improve the live fan experience, because fans are paying their hard-earned money in Japan. If we want to use the economics thing as a crutch, they are paying their hard-earned money that they get on a monthly basis. Japan pays their employees across the board every single month. It is not like here where you get paid either weekly or bi-weekly. In Japan, everybody gets paid monthly. So they have to figure out what they're going to be doing for expenses and all that kind of stuff. And to have that live fan experience, you will have meet and greets, merch will be available. You guys could do vlogs. You guys can definitely have special seats and so forth and so forth. Maybe a fan experience can be them working at the NJPW merch shop in Japan or something of that nature. But Tanahashi does want to include maybe like special food menus and bonuses and the special seating for the ladies and female fans and stuff. So to improve fan live experience is to have those kind of outside the box kind of ideas. And you also would need your champion, because your champion should be making ads saying if you end up becoming a member of the New Japan Pro Wrestling Club, you get first dibs on tickets. You can pick your seats. You can have a section with you and your friends somewhere in the arena, like special stuff. And the champion should be doing ads for that, whether it is the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion or the Never Champion or the NJPW TV Champion. And then also for fans that are viewing at home on the NJPW World website and app, there should be something special for us too, because we also pay for that membership fee. So I would like the fans that support New Japan Pro Wrestling through NJPW World also get something of an awesome experience at home, because we cannot be there. We cannot travel to Japan due to our own expenses and due to our own problems, but would like to still support and still be part of that experience. And of course, point number 8 is improving NJPW World, where Tanahashi was just talking about how the transfer to a new system for the NJPW World is just taking a little bit too long. They got bugs and they just want to improve it, and they're working on it day by day. Point number 9, improved treatment of personal information. This is basically about the time that NJPW lost a USB memory stick that had a lot of customer information, but it was only the names. There was nothing on there that was stored like addresses, phone numbers, emails. Well, they probably had emails, but like nothing in the event of getting somebody doxxed or stalked or any vital information. It is still a breach of privacy, and it has yet to be found, this USB stick. So that is what point number 9 is just to update people on the USB stick, and that the fans' trust is in their utmost in mind, and they're going to implement new policies and improve employee training so that way it does not happen again. So it is still wrong, but someone should have been paying attention. And the last point of this press conference is talking about sponsorships. That is number 10. Number 10 is about sponsorships. If you guys do not know, news recently came out that one of our sponsors, LECco.Ltd. will be ending their sponsorship in June. This was their main sponsorship for years, and it definitely helped out the G1 Climax. Hopefully, New Japan Pro Wrestling ends up getting more sponsors to fund the G1 and the rest of the tournaments going forward. And that's basically a wrap from the 10 points that will grow New Japan Pro Wrestling. And none of them were substantial. None of them really address any of the issues that New Japan Pro Wrestling has. New Japan Pro Wrestling wants you to believe that everything is okay between them and AEW. I would honestly feel some type of way that Tony Khan decided to take their top stars right from under them. It does not matter if Tony Khan has more money than most. Money does not grow on trees. Eventually, his money plus Ric Flair's energy drink company money and his inheritance money from his dad are going to run out. And then we're going to have a situation like WCW. WCW promised the biggest stars in that company a guaranteed contract of ridiculous amount of money. And when they could not pay them, they essentially went under, and Vince McMahon bought them out and bought out those contracts and realized that he could not sustain those contracts either. So those big stars were out of a fucking job. This is why it gets so frustrating to talk with supposed AEW fans, and AEW fans don't want to open up their mind to the fact that this could be a possibility down the line where the money is going to run out. Of course, they can make money off of the pay-per-view buys and any other revenue stream, but that goes back to probably Tony's pocket, because he's renting out the arenas. He's paying the arenas ahead of time to be there. It's not like WWE where arenas and countries are like, we'll pay you X amount of money to come to our country, to come to our arena. So Tony Khan is in the red somewhere. And again, even if he's getting the revenue coming in from the other revenue streams, it's not enough. It's not going to be enough. And to pay out the wrestlers that he got from New Japan Pro Wrestling, I don't know how much he's paying them, but you really do have to really think about the big picture of like the more wrestlers he buys, the more money he's spending into them, and the more money with travel, the more money with everything that goes on, eventually the money is going to run out. Everyone online, especially Twitter, loves to be like, AEW created jobs, AEW created this. It could have been any other 3-letter company that could have done the same thing that AEW is doing. So AEW is not special. TNA Wrestling gives wrestlers jobs. NXT gives wrestlers jobs and creates the new future of WWE stars. WWE gives wrestlers jobs. MLW gives wrestlers jobs. The unlimited amount of indie promotions gives wrestlers jobs. So AEW is not special in creating more jobs. They are contributing to the ecosystem of professional wrestling and where you can wrestle. And even though WWE is still the plan for 99% of wrestlers to go to and probably end their career at WWE, there are other options, and having other options are good, but eventually you want to go on to WWE. Don't fight it. That is a truth. But AEW fans will convince themselves of the delusion that everything is okay. We should all enjoy wrestling. We should all like wrestling. And in my mind, I'm either thinking that they had a lot of participation trophies growing up, and that they all were coddled and they thought that everything was on an even playing field, and that is not the case. There is a serious issue here between the partnership of New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW. Just because Kadani and Tony Khan had a nice talk, and all Tony Khan wanted to do was talk about the 90s and how he likes New Japan Pro Wrestling during the 90s and how he liked one wrestler named Hase, Hase, and Kadani was like, hey, I was a junior and he was a junior and we went to the same school or something like that, where Kadani knows Hase, Hase. He knows him personally because they have that connection. So when mentioning that to Tony Khan, it was sort of like that's their common ground. But I will say this again, and it goes back to the other narrative that wrestling fans will get on other wrestling fans of, why do you like nostalgia so much? There is a time and place for nostalgia. Very time and place. There's a lot of wrestling fans that will say that they love the Attitude Era, and the Attitude Era was in the 2000s. And then before that, like the 90s era of like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Ric Flair and these larger than life characters. And people love that because for them, that was peak wrestling. This is the same thing with Tony Khan, that he likes 90s wrestlers. And of course, Kadani is going to appreciate that because his friend that kept getting mentioned is the common ground, the commonality. The reason why I bring this up is because the wrestling fans that would say, why do you want nostalgia, are kind of right in a way. I agree with that, like 60%. Why do you want to go back to the past? The past is usually the funnest part of everyone's life. Right now, we're all fucking miserable. But if you look to the past, you're like, that was a fun time. However, you still have to go forward and you still have to be excited for the future because the unknown is very, very scary. But when you face it head on and you see the beauty of what the unknown can unfold and bring to life, it definitely creates a new chapter in an era that could be fun. The same way as the 90s, Attitude Era, Reality Era, PG Era, all those eras. The unknown can definitely change into a golden era for you as a wrestling fan. The present is what we're seeing in real time. The present is as real as it's going to get. The point being is that if you focus on the past so much, and it's like, I like this from the past, I like that from the past, I understand that. I get that. I like the past too. But you have to celebrate the present because you are here in the present. You are here watching wrestling in real time, reacting to wrestling in real time, shaping wrestling in real time with all of your voices, even though not everyone needs a voice and not everyone needs an opinion, because most of the opinions just say shit for the sake of saying shit and end up clout chasing. And then when you call them out on it, they want to act like the fucking victim. So not everyone should have an opinion on wrestling sometimes. It gets a little overwhelming, a little annoying because the wrong kind of information gets out and the misinformation is everywhere. And in the digital age, misinformation spreads like wildfire, and then you can never put it out. And that's a very bad thing, and that's a very irresponsible thing for wrestling fans. But do you think wrestling fans take any responsibility for that? And I am also throwing dirt sheets in here too. No, they do not take responsibility for anything they put on the internet. Anyway, the point is, if you constantly refer back to the 90s, you are not excited for New Japan Pro Wrestling's present and New Japan Pro Wrestling's future. So this is why it raises a concern, and the issues are a little bit more bigger than what people are making it to seem, but I'm the only one talking about this because I care about New Japan Pro Wrestling. I care about New Japan Pro Wrestling being around for another 70 years because New Japan Pro Wrestling provides a different kind of platform and outlet for professional wrestlers to learn on the fly, learn from their peers, and learn a different type of culture that you will not get over here in the United States. Everybody here plays it safe. Sometimes you have to leave the nest in order to become the best version of you. And that goes for all the wrestling fans, that go for ordinary people, 9-to-5 people, overnight people. Sometimes leaving the nest to go search for greener pastures, whether you fail or don't fail or some shit happens, makes you into a better person than you were yesterday. And this is what New Japan Pro Wrestling does. However, New Japan Pro Wrestling just has a very slower, methodical way of creating stars, and right now they have to put a little bit more gas into creating stars and a little bit more risk into creating stars, even though like I don't want a 23-year-old to hold the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship title because the 23-year-old doesn't really know much yet. They don't have that much experience yet in the wrestling business. But someone who's like mid-20s, 30s, sure, they have that. They're a little bit more seasoned. A 23-year-old is really not gonna know too much or know what to do or know how to handle the Japanese crowd. So they need those reps. They need those matches. They need sometimes the old guard to help them out with the crowd. But Tanahashi has to think of everything in terms of WWE and entertainment. And depending on where they go, their biggest market for entertainment purposes is probably going to be the Tokyo area, the Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, all those places. Korakuen Hall turns you into a rock star. That's what I love about Korakuen Hall crowds. They are so real and raw and emotional. And I love that they book Korakuen Hall because they make wrestlers get over. They make wrestlers sound like rock stars. And that's what you need. They probably need a little mini circuit in just Korakuen Hall and have the young lions and the graduates just go at it and have the fans react to it. And that'll be great. That's how Jay White became a star. That's how all the other wrestlers became a star, because Korakuen Hall makes you sound like a rock star. Okay. Let me wrap this up before I continue to talk and go off the handle and all that kind of stuff. I just really am passionate about New Japan Pro Wrestling, and New Japan Pro Wrestling means a lot to me. And it's kind of sad that no one else is talking about it. We're not having a panel discussion about it and these issues. So I'm going to do it and take it upon myself to talk about it. With that being said, I really do want things to improve. But as I said, we're seeing this in real time, and I don't really think it's going to improve. And I don't want no empty promises from New Japan Pro Wrestling. Tanahashi has been in the presidency for 6 months for New Japan Pro Wrestling, and that is not enough time for me to judge whether he's doing a good job or a bad job. I will say that he is too nice. He doesn't know how to put his foot down. With Tony Khan, you have to put your foot down and you have to be like, this is what we're doing, and how else can you contribute to the ideas that I have presented on the table? Tanahashi is learning everything. He's getting into the groove of being a president of New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's a wrestler that now is a president, so he has a different outlook on everything, and he's learning, and he's very teachable, and he's very adaptable, and I have the utmost respect for Tanahashi, and I understand that this is a tough position, but you cannot do this with people by your side that wants to live in the past. You have to have people by your side that will celebrate the past with you and that will acknowledge the present and fix the present a little bit more quickly and be excited for the future. And how this happens is you have to start implementing maybe just a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of writing, a little bit of direction, a little bit of production meetings, something that sort of resembles what America does, but not so heavy on it. Just a little bit of direction goes a long way. You guys ever heard of the phrase less is more? Well, New Japan Pro Wrestling, they need to do less is more when it comes to their reshaping of what New Japan Pro Wrestling is going to mean for the future. They've already done the less is more thing, but now it's a little bit more apparent. If they do more is less, we're not really going to do that. But I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys for listening to this long ass podcast of my reaction to Tanahashi's press conference, laying out the 10-step roadmap to how to improve New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I really hope that you guys enjoy it. Please make sure to visit the link down below in the description box. It is called Meal Train. I was not the only one affected by getting money stolen out of my account. There are others, and they are speaking out on it as well. And so if you are so much inclined and encouraged and want to be helpful, you could donate to Meal Train just to help me for the time being, because I'm just in a bit of a jam. And I want to say thank you so much for listening. If you cannot donate or help out, that's totally okay. Just make sure to share this podcast out and comment on it and everything else like that. You can find me on social media at Maria_Shadows on Twitter. You could also send me a DM if you want to send me a direct message via email, squaredcirclepodcast@outlook.com. If you want to follow the YouTube channel, please do so. I highly encourage it. Please subscribe to youtube.com/Squared Circle Podcast. Catch me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Maria_Shadows. Find me everywhere. All the links down in the description below. I really, 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 really love you guys. And you have been listening to an episode of the Squared Circle Podcast. I'll see you guys on the next one.